Xbox has a new controller for you. Game Pass proves the haters wrong. Buy an Xbox before prices go up. Activision gets desperate. Let's discuss. I'm coming at you with another news update. You know how this goes at this point. I gather a number of stories from around the video game industry and share them with you to make sure that you are Xbox ready. First up, Xbox has released a new controller, the Deep Pink controller. It's priced at $64.99 and is available on the Microsoft Store right now. I don't know how I feel about the black on this controller. It has black Y, B, X, and A buttons, black bumpers and black triggers, and then a white back panel. I feel like they could have done pink and white. Bam. Perfect Valentine's Day controller, perfect gift for any gamer in your life. But if you're interested in buying it, checking it out, I'll have the link down in the description below. Next up, let's talk about Hi-Fi Rush, the latest title from Tango Gameworks. They announced this game last week at Xbox's Developer Direct, and they were like, surprise, it's available to play right now, today. You can play it on Game Pass, you can buy it on Steam. And since then, it has been the talk of the town. Everyone on Twitter, I feel like, is talking about this game. I'm on the last boss of this game, and honestly, it's just brought me so much joy. I find the combat super satisfying when it's really clicking and when you're really locked in and you're hitting those beats. It's being reviewed incredibly well by multiple news outlets. Tango Gameworks has hit another really impressive milestone with this game. Hi-Fi Rush appears to have outsold Forspoken on Steam in its opening week. Now that's impressive for a number of reasons. One, Forspoken had this huge traditional marketing campaign over on the PlayStation side. We were seeing footage for this game like as far back as early last year, early 2022. They even had a demo you could play a couple of months ago, and by comparison, Hi-Fi Rush, I didn't even know this game existed until last week, and it's quickly become one of my favorite games I've played over the past couple of months. It could very well be one of my favorite games of 2023. It's also very impressive because Hi-Fi Rush right now is $30 on Xbox and Steam. Forspoken is $70. So for Hi-Fi Rush to have out-earned Forspoken on Steam, it speaks volumes to how many copies they actually sold. Currently, Hi-Fi Rush is the #7 best-selling game on Steam. And honestly, I've been scrolling for a while and I can't even find Forspoken. According to this article, it was number 58 at the time they wrote it. And again, for games that both sort of released at the same time, that's a pretty big gap. It's funny that I'm talking about comparisons for these two games because I know a lot of people were critical about the dialogue in Forspoken. They were saying it's like typical like MCU, like the worst comedic writing of like superhero movies. And then they were saying, oh, well, Hi-Fi Rush, that has the same sort of style and dialogue. What's the difference? People are being critical of Forspoken. People are not being critical of Hi-Fi Rush. And for me personally, it's like Hi-Fi Rush is like a cartoon. It's like a comic book, animated adventure, and from my understanding, Forspoken was supposed to be a little bit more on the serious side. Even without comparing Hi-Fi Rush's sales to Forspoken's, these numbers that we're seeing on Steam, they seem to buck a very common narrative about titles that appear on Game Pass. Critics of Game Pass are always like, well, Xbox people, they don't buy games, people don't buy games if they're on Game Pass, and Hi-Fi Rush seems to be the exception to that argument, because like I said earlier in the video, Hi-Fi Rush is available on console Game Pass and on PC Game Pass. So you have a whole market of people who can play Hi-Fi Rush for like $1 down. I'm of course speaking of like, oh, pay $1 for your first month of PC Game Pass, but are instead choosing to buy it full price through Steam. I can imagine that is hugely validating for Tango Gameworks, and it's a great look for Microsoft who want to expand their presence in the PC gaming world. I don't know if it totally dispels the myth of like, oh, if a game releases on Game Pass, it's gonna sell bananas elsewhere, but I feel like this is a good example of the best case scenario of Xbox releasing a game on Game Pass day and date, but also getting some sales on the side through Steam and other places. Now we gotta talk about Halo, and guys, this saga regarding Halo and the layoffs happening at 343 has been crazy. It's been like one thing after the other. Every week we learn something new. The man at the forefront of all of this is none other than Jason Schreier, who's a reporter over at Bloomberg. And for those of you who are not aware of his work, he is like the premier gaming news reporter. He was the one that when we first learned that Microsoft was laying off 10,000 people, he's the one that made public that these layoffs in some way affected 343 Industries and Bethesda, especially teams that were working on the single-player campaign content. He came out with a bunch of juicy gossip and drama going on at 343 Industries, and he's come out with even more juicy stuff. According to his reports and research, at least 95 people have been laid off at 343 Industries. Apparently, the people let go included dozens of veterans, including top directors and contractors upon which the studio heavily relies. Those temporary employees were given just a few days warning before their contracts came to an end, according to the people familiar with the process, asking not to be identified because they weren't authorized to speak publicly. He confirmed the rumors that developers working on Halo Infinite were frustrated with the engine that they were working with, and even went so far as to connect, hey, the reason why we don't have some game modes like Assault and Extraction is because of the headaches that the engine is causing the developers. He confirmed that Halo is making the pivot officially to Unreal Engine 5. That's something that we heard about a couple of months ago, but it's official. It is official now that it is in Bloomberg. And once Certain Affinity ships the Battle Royale mode that's being codenamed Tatanka, everything in Halo is going to pivot fully into Unreal Engine 5. They say future games in the series will also explore using the Unreal Engine, which may make development easier, although internal skeptics are worried that the switch may have a negative impact on the way Halo games feel and play. This next bit continues to blow my mind because, again, he once again iterates that they did not have plans to further the story of Halo Infinite through DLC or additional missions. According to Jason's sources, specifically he says developers were making prototypes in the Unreal Engine and pitching ideas for new Halo games rather than working on new missions for Halo Infinite. Many of those developers were laid off this month and the company isn't actively working on new story content. So key things to take away from this, they suggest right at the top with the headline of this article that Halo is facing a reboot on years of turmoil. It's said that they're basically starting from scratch over there at 343 Industries. Now, this whole saga surrounding Halo has been a lot of drama, it's been a little on the crazy side, but honestly, starting from scratch on Halo doesn't sound so bad. I know they had a plan for Halo Infinite to be this 10-year game, but it might be in their best interest to kind of, okay, we tried some different things with Halo Infinite, let's move on to a new Halo game, a new Halo experience, and try to figure something out, try to get some new traction. Because again, even though I think Halo Infinite is fun, I have a good time whenever I play it, it has gotten way too much attention for all the wrong reasons. It might be best to just leave it behind and move on. So not too long ago, I came on here and I talked about a price increase in India on the Xbox Series X and S consoles. It was the second price increase that they had experienced in the span of, like, I want to say 6 months. Now, this isn't super surprising because we have heard from Xbox that they do plan to raise the prices on not only their games and services, but on their hardware as well in the future. And that increase in the Indian market on Xbox consoles was kind of the first signs of that. Well, now another Xbox supported region is getting a price increase, this time in Japan. Both the Series X and the Series S are getting a price increase of about 5,000 yen, which according to Pure Xbox is about 40 USD. This price increase is expected to kick in on February 17th and just last for the rest of the generation, I guess. Xbox Japan put out a statement on why they increased the price. They said, after carefully evaluating the market condition in Japan, we have decided to change the suggested retail price of Xbox consoles in the country. We regularly evaluate the impact of local pricing to maintain reasonable consistency across regions. This price revisions affects our customers and was a difficult decision to make, but going forward, we will continue to provide the ultimate Xbox experience that our customers expect. Now, previously on this channel, we have detailed Microsoft's attempts to grow the Xbox brand in Japan. They want to get more sales in Japan. They want to have a better relationship with developers based out of Japan. They're really trying hard to just push more units and grow the brand over in that market. And from everything we've seen, they've been doing a pretty decent job. Of course, they're not selling like gangbusters out there, but compared to previous generations, the Xbox Series X and S are selling comparatively better. We have a number of really awesome games developed by Japanese studios on Game Pass, but the reality is that Xbox consoles, they're just not selling super well in Japan compared to obviously PlayStation and Nintendo Switches. I don't know the intricacies of the foreign economics, the strength of the yen versus the dollar, but it seems to me that Xbox is gonna have a harder time in Japan moving units with this price increase. And it just makes me think, Who's next? What market is going to see a price increase on Xbox hardware? Like, are they waiting to increase the price of Xbox consoles in the US? And if so, what are they waiting for? Are they waiting for Sony to increase their prices first? Are they waiting to see how this current crop of games that they got coming out does and see if they move any units with that, like Starfield, Redfall, Motorsport? We've already seen Xbox increase the price of their first-party titles. If I were to make a guess, I would say the next thing that they up the prices on are Game Pass subscriptions. I would say for the rest of 2023, hardware is going to be safe, at least in like the US and Western markets. Maybe in 2024, we would see a little bit of a price increase on Xbox consoles. But if I were to make a bet, I would say that they're gonna wait until Sony increases the prices on PS5s in the US. We know that they've done it in other markets. They increase the price by like $50 equivalent. And whenever that happens, I feel like Xbox is gonna be like, okay, it's safe. That's essentially what happened to first-party titles. They said, okay, all first-party PlayStation games are gonna be $70 now instead of $60. And for a long time, Xbox was like, we're gonna keep it at $60. And then they were like, oh, never mind, we're gonna up to $70 as well. So it wouldn't surprise me if they adopted that strategy with their Xbox consoles. Next up, let's talk about the Activision Blizzard acquisition. Currently, they're about to be involved in a lawsuit with the FTC who's trying to block that deal. Well, an executive from Activision recently took to Twitter and made a really interesting thread, I would say. She says that the success of The Last of Us on HBO and the fact that it's raising game sales of The Last of Us Part 1 to like over 300% is proof that Sony has a war chest of IPs that they can use to maintain their position as market leader in the video game industry. Now, on one end, this whole Twitter thread seems kind of weird to me. It's like she's the CCO of Activision and she's tweeting at the FTC. I mean, this just doesn't seem like the time or the place to submit this argument. I feel like there's a more official way to do it, but hey, what do I know? I also feel like it's a bit of a reach saying, hey, look at the success of The Last of Us on HBO. Therefore, Xbox should own the entire catalog of Activision Blizzard. It's especially weird considering that we know Activision Blizzard wants to be bought, because previously to this acquisition, they were embroiled in all sorts of drama, their stock was falling, and Xbox essentially gave them a golden parachute. So we know that people involved in the Activision Blizzard team, they want this to go through. There's like kind of like a, conflict of interest, I would say. But part of this Twitter thread echoes stuff that I've said on the channel before. She says, Sony has an unrivaled war chest of IP, not just in gaming, but TV, movies, and music, which can be developed into games or can market existing games. Sony's talent and IP across gaming are truly impressive and formidable, she says. I understand why Sony wouldn't want this deal to go through, because they make a ton of money off of these third-party titles that Activision Blizzard offers. And anything that threatens that, well, that's a bit of a problem for them. But on the other side, I feel like Sony will be just fine. They have a ton of successful IPs that they can fall back on. They don't essentially need Call of Duty. Not like Call of Duty is going to be taken away from them, because Xbox has pinky sworn, they've crossed their fingers and said they're going to keep it on PlayStation consoles and bring it over to Switch, keep it on Steam, yada yada yada. So yeah, if this deal goes through, Sony will be just fine. Like, come on, at the Game Awards, they had like 3 games that were exclusive to the PlayStation platform nominated for Game of the Year: God of War Ragnarok, Stray, and Horizon Forbidden West. That talent and those celebrated franchises are not gonna just disappear if Xbox does acquire Activision Blizzard.